I think they're going to look alright once I've lowered the rear a bit more. Also need to do a bit more work on the front wings. Try and dolly this out, maybe get a bit more stretch on that front arch. This one's a little bit battered from where it's rubbed in the past, and then with the camber on the rear, need a bit more camber, and then I can lower it a bit. So I'll probably modify the axle. But what do we think? I think I'm the first person in the UK to have this wheel in this size. It's a 13x7 ET-7 with a 185/60/13. Today I'm working on a 205 with a 18T Volkswagen engine. Just making the exhaust and intercooler pipes. Let me know if you want to see more of this one. So these are the wheels. I'm not that excited about this at the moment. Looks okay on the front, but the back is terrible. Doesn't fit at all and rubs like hell. So what I'm going to do is modify the axle a bit more. I've got a bit of box section and another axle, so I'm going to attempt to make a jig so I can cut this axle down and then replace the axle that's on the car. Look at the panel gap there. From stretching the wing out, I've completely ruined panel gap, and I also added some more camber at the top. This is where I'm at the minute. I've started to make up these things. My plan was that I would weld these onto box section at 2.5 or 3 degrees or whatever, and then I'd be able to lift the axle in and out. But then of course you can't, if it's at an angle like that, you're not going to be able to lift the axle out because you'll have to bend the jig to get the axle out. So then I thought I'll just make it bolt on. So that's going to bolt down onto there, and then the piece is going to come up at 2.5 degrees, so the stubs can bolt to it. Oh yeah, so just so you know, the stubs bolt on whatever way around they go, like that. Actually it's like that. This is the bottom of the axle, and then I didn't have anything for like any way of measuring any angles. So I have used trigonometry, and with a 4mm Allen key, basically a 3mm Allen, hang on a minute, to get 2mm or 2 degrees, sorry, of camber, I would need a 3.46 Allen key. I've got a 3mm and a 4mm, so with the 4mm it works out at about 2.3 degrees of camber. So with any luck I'll have 2.3 degrees on each side, and I've tried to measure that car and see what, you know, measure the rear and see what camber I've got on the rear, and even though the car's not on level ground, I just measured both sides and took one from the other, and it works out at about 2.1. I don't know, I always thought it was more than 2 degrees. Maybe it's not. Can't really tell, can you? Maybe it is only 2 degrees. This side's definitely got more than the other side. I never even removed the axle from the car when I did it. I just cut the ends off, welded it and eyeballed it. So yeah, hopefully trigonometry is going to save the day, and I'm just going to let this cool down and hope that it doesn't move too much. Then I'll weld the next one, and then we'll get on to the actual axle itself. By the way, I don't even know if I said, but these are AutoStar Kanji 13x7 ET-7 4x100, and I've got 185/60 13 NS2Rs as per norm. This is where I am at right now. I can't remember if I showed how I set the yeah, I think I did show you how I set the angle. So as you can see, it's touching at the bottom, basically touching at the top. It's about a hair away, and the same, it's about a hair away at the bottom but touching the top, so that's pretty close. And then the same here, touching the bottom and basically touching the top, touching the bottom and basically touching the top, is touching the top. So that's basically the jig side of things done. Now, hang on, just trying to get my tape measure out. Distance between there and there, I know this isn't very accurately, I'm not measuring it very accurately, it's basically 1240, and the axle down there is 1294, so I'm basically taking 54 mil off of the entire width, and I think the axle on here is 15 mil per side smaller. So I'm basically going to be pushing the wheel in an extra 10 mil on each side and hoping that that is going to be enough. So the next stage for me is going to be cutting the axle. I know I said that I'd like to do a K-swap or whatever shit I said like weeks and weeks ago, but I'm kind of glad I didn't commit, because it would have been a struggle doing it outside in this weather. As it happens, I'm still working on the rear axle stuff, and I discovered that there is a huge difference between facelift and pre-facelift, so I'm now on to my second axle, because the first one is no good for my car unless I upgrade the brakes to facelift, which ain't gonna happen. Like, I kind of made a tent, but I'm absolutely piss wet through. But to be honest, I think once I've got this axle done, I don't think it'll take me much more than like an hour or so to get it all back together. It takes longer than it should because I just don't want to get wet. Anyway, hopefully I'll have something to show by the end of today. If not, I'm walking home in the rain. Kind of got somewhere now. Think I've just got to put the wheel on this side and tighten up a couple of bolts on the axle. Once I get that stand out of the way, the bolt above it, I need to tighten that, get the exhaust back on. That's the axle that I modified and don't need. Something odd that I noticed was this bracket to here is a different measurement from one side to the other, but all the other brackets are in exactly the same place from one side to the other. Interesting. I wonder why the bracket, and I'm talking like 10-15 mil difference. Odd. Anyway, I am going to crack this out and then hope that the tyres don't rub anymore. Pretty nice day. Probably a good day to start